So, Alex, what's the reason I cringe whenever I hear someone use the word brand?
That's a good question. I think it comes, this frustration, this deep despair of that word, comes from maybe a misinterpretation of what it means and what purpose it serves in music and in communicating with other people and building relationships. And I feel that, yeah, part of that frustration might be from the lack of significance of brand or the concept of brand in and of itself without it being in a different context. It's kind of an empty statement.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I probably need to be a bit more clear. So, if I was having a conversation with the CEO of Coca-Cola, I might not cringe if they used the word brand. Um, Similarly, if I was having a conversation, just maybe, with a huge artist, which I did just a few hours ago. But you know what? He never used the word brand, not once. Funnily enough, but if he did, I might not have cringed um, so much, a little bit maybe, but not so much. Or maybe if I'd have been having a conversation with the I don't know, the boss of a major label, I might not have that same reaction. But I definitely have that reaction if I'm talking to an independent artist who's trying to break through. it's like, it's like often I believe that we use the word brand because we don't know what to do. Right, so I've just got to get my branding sorted. So what is it that people mean when they say I've got to get my branding sorted? I mean, depending on the people, but let's talk about independent artists who, aspiring independent artists who don't have massive audiences. What do you think people? I mean, I don't actually know what they mean exactly. I'm not sure they do know what they mean, but what could they mean when they say, "Oh, I need to get my branding sorted"?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the intention behind that could be the perception, trying to alter the perception that others have of you, or being trying to put your best foot forward, trying to come off a certain way, professional, serious, whatever it may be. I think that might be the intention, is you want to do what you can to be taken seriously. Um, and and then as for what you actually would mean in terms of actionable, something practical, maybe the font or your look or the vision, or
Logo.
what someone would see of, yeah, a logo, something to try and influence that. That's what I would guess most people are maybe thinking of in terms of brand.
Mm. And what's the problem with so in that context? I mean, all of that's understandable, isn't it?
Hmm.
So what's my problem with it then? If that is all understandable and makes sense and seems to be a good thing to focus on.
I feel, yeah, it's one of those things that's all those things almost sound good to focus on. Like we just said, it's common sense. Like, yeah, that sounds like a viable path to follow. But in terms of a music producer, an artist, musician who's trying to break out, I feel like it's definitely not the number one thing to be focusing on. Um, like you said, maybe if you're Coca-Cola, maybe if you have a huge company that, like, public image is millions and millions of dollars of marketing and research and stuff like that, maybe it's a different story. But as an independent music producer, I think that the music and your relationship to your music more directly, and sharing that with others, would probably be more important than any sort of idea of a brand.
Yeah, so aside from the difference, like I think broadly speaking, I mean this could be argued with, but broadly speaking, in marketing terms, there's brand marketing and there's direct response marketing. Okay, so aside from that difference, and just as a quick like outline, and this is very quick. So essentially, brand marketing is about advertising on things like billboards, TV, getting as many touch points with everyone as possible, so that people start to build up an association of some particular feeling or some particular phrase or a way of a sort of a feeling that you get, you know, Coca-Cola, the thing running down the side, and you know, and the happy music and beautiful people and all that, you know. So like multiple touch points, yeah. And there's that classic phrase, you know, I know that 50% of my advertising budget is a waste, I just don't know which 50%. That's the brand marketing kind of model, right? Now, obviously, in that sense, independent musicians or even relatively big musicians can't, I mean, anything that isn't a huge business, you can't really do that because it's dependent on you reaching everyone and just hitting the same people multiple times. I mean, that's why you get, or used to have, I mean, I can't remember the last time I watched broadcast TV, but used to have the same ad over and over again, is because that's the point of it. It's creating that association. It's like, you know, behavioral, yeah. Whereas direct response marketing is, it's literally direct response. You ask somebody to take an action and then they respond. And why it's become so big is because with the internet, you can now literally measure what, you know, whether people are responding to this thing. So you can do it with much smaller audiences and build a much deeper connection with those smaller audiences, with the audiences who actually want to reach you. You don't put it up on a billboard. And you don't have to have as many, I mean, you do still need multiple touch points, but you don't need to have as many because it's much more focused and targeted. And so that's the difference in general between, and again, I'm not a marketing, you know, I haven't been to marketing college or anything, but in general, that's the difference between the two. And obviously, that's one problem with the idea of brand, because big brands are able to do that because they have, you know, hundreds of millions to spend, whereas small companies, tiny companies, solo musicians can't do that. Right? So, but aside from all of that, let's just put that to one side. Let's kind of talk about what actually a musician has to do to break through, to break through the noise, because that's really what we're talking about. Yeah, it's definitely not going to be possible to make as much noise, which is what you would do if you were using brand marketing. Yeah, It's just like have loads of it. Yeah.
More.
So in that sense, like the idea of branding, but if we just take it again, I'm trying to take it away from that. If we actually think about what is it that you are doing, like what are you actually doing when you're creating a brand? And I always use that phrase, brand. It's just because it sounds like you're being. One of the problems I have with it is that it sounds like you're being serious, right? I've got to get my branding sorted. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's just got this air of like I'm taking this seriously, right? And I get it,
Yeah.
but is it taking it seriously? But let's actually take the idea. So what are you actually doing with a logo? What are you actually doing with your artwork? More importantly than any of that, what are you actually doing with your music? I mean, if anything, that is, if you want to talk about brand, and I hate using the word, but we brought it up, so let's just use it. The B word, I call it. So the most powerful, important expression of your brand, if you want to call it that, is the bloody music. Mozart. It's the notes, right? Right. But what is it that, I mean, why, like, if we take, well, with everything I said about brand marketing, what Coca-Cola does, how is that relevant? So let's talk about how maybe branding is relevant in the way that it needs to be relevant, because it can't just be, your branding isn't your logo. Your branding isn't a color scheme. Your branding isn't your artwork, right? So what is behind it? What is behind this ridiculous word that we musicians use to describe the things that we don't know what we're supposed to be doing? Right? What do we need to be focused on? Alex.
Well, that is a great question. I think, like you pointed to, that the logo, the branding, the image, the artwork are all supposed to represent something. So what is that thing it's representing, right? So it's like you said, it's like those are surface things. Those are the result, but what is the cause behind that thing? And especially with music, and especially independent solo artist, musician, it's very personal. Like it's a brand of one. Unless you have a team, it's you. So I feel that there's more so building relationships with who you are as a musician through your music, your creative process. Like all of it is part of your music because it comes from you. And like building relationships with people who resonate with any of that process feels like there would be your brand, because there's going to be a certain way you do things. You're going to have certain life experience. You're going to have a story to tell. You're going to have your own style of your influences, and all of that equals the thing that is behind your music, and it also represents your music, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like that is kind of in that area is probably the area of the brand of your music. And
Yeah.
that's what people are going to connect with is like personally, when I think back to my favorite artists growing up and even today, is my favorite artists, I know their names, I know part of their process, I know a little bit of their history, and it's typically that they have some kind of mindset, some kind of philosophy, or even just a common interest that I resonate with. And it's almost that it's not to say that the music isn't the most important thing, because that's the thing where I'm really resonating with them, but it's the human things around the music that is also very important, because after all, we are human. And those kind of things it's funny because you don't really think about them, but they're probably the most crucial things to be connecting with somebody, right? To build a relationship with a fan or another artist or something like that. So that's kind of what I think of brand when we think of the real, like not just the logo.
Yeah, exactly. I've got a timer running here so that we don't like speak forever. So I'm just going to stop it from going ding 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 ding. So if we take what I was talking about, brand marketing. So when you see an ad by a brand, what they're attempting to do is to create an association that you feel something, a specific, usually, thing when you think of that brand. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, that is actually very useful for anyone trying to reach anyone else. It's like, what is the state, the vibe, the emotion, or maybe not but a set of emotions, that is authentically me. Now, that might be a hard question to answer if you haven't asked that question before. So, well, I want to write some happy music, and I want to write some sad music, and I want to write some angry music. But all of those things can have a vibe, it's a state, it's a brand, if you like, right? So it's what is it? What am I authentically trying to get across? What is authentic to me? What is the purpose of my music? Yeah. What is the value that I have to bring to the world, and how can I telegraph that within my music, within my first and foremost, like forget everything else until you got. I mean, I was a panelist at a music conference a few years ago, and I mean, to be fair, the guy who was also on this panel, who answered the question, he was at a major record label, so from his perspective, it makes total sense. So it's not that he was wrong, he was right from his perspective, but. Mm-hmm. when he answered the question that I'm about to tell you, I was literally like, are you kidding me? So it was, what would you suggest? Because this was a room full of aspiring artists trying to break through. What would you say, what is the most important thing to do right now for any artist, any music artist who, hasn't made it? And this guy sat there with that straight face and said, well, the first thing you need to do is get your branding sorted. And I was just like, like I didn't quite, because I was like, I had a couple of people in between me, so I was third along, I think. So I didn't have to, I had a time, because I actually got a bit cross inside, because I just, that's the worst advice for these people. Not that he's wrong again, but for these people I have ever heard. Right? Because the number one thing you need to do is get your music sorted and out regularly and be making your music. And so there was that. But the thing is, your number one thing that you are, the number one way that you are expressing this thing that some people call brand, but I call the authentic core experience that you're giving to people, the core of your product, if you like. Yeah. Is this thing. What do you want people to feel so that they know that when they see you on a feed or on a video or a piece of your music on Spotify, wherever it is, they know what they're getting. And it doesn't mean that you're trapped by a specific genre. This goes beyond genre. This transcends genre. It transcends even a specific emotion, but it's like a vibe, if you like. Yeah. And once you can get really clear on the thing, the experience that is authentic to you, that only you can put across in the way that you do, in your music, in your images, in your copy, even in the way that you do what you do, the structure of your business, everything is expressing this authentic core experience. Well, then you can start talking about brand. Because that is really what a brand is to me, anyway. It's like, when you interact with Make Music Your Life, we do things in a particular way. And there's always improvements to be made. There's always, there are mistakes, and there's lots of things that go wrong. And often we don't authentically do the thing that because this is an ongoing process. But there is a specific brand, if you like, around it. But that's because we've not been thinking about brand. Because the problem is with the word brand is it sounds good. It sounds serious. It sounds... But people don't know what it actually is. It doesn't... They don't know what they're doing. They don't know what it means. They think it's just a logo sometimes, I think. Right? So maybe, what I would be suggesting that anyone who is attempting to break through as a musician is, well, what is it that you're actually doing? Like, what is the purpose of your music? What do you want people to feel? Right? In your music, through your music, number one. How can I then express that in everything else that I do? Yeah, forget the B word and start being authentic.